because he's going to leave Laban, go back to his hometown, start on his own, and all this. This is an exciting time where he does this. You know, fresh starts in life and new phases of life, they can be real nice. Sometimes they're scary, but they can be nice. Say you're moving, you're going to have new neighbors, you're going to have a new house, you're going to have all these things, and it can be scary. But a lot of times people will say, well, I'm entering into a new phase. Maybe you got a new job, or unfortunately, sometimes people have a failed relationship and now they're single when they didn't used to be, or now, they used to be single and now they're getting married or something like that. And so they're entering to a new phase of life. It can be interesting. It can be exciting. It can be scary. But the problem is a lot of times we enter into these new phases of life, which could be wonderful things for us, bringing us closer to the Lord and getting us to a better position in our life to serve Him and all. But it could also become a very bad thing in our life. And I think a lot of times people enter into a new phase thinking that that's going to change everything, and they make a lot of mistakes entering into that phase of life. Retirement's another one I just thought of. Maybe someone's worked their whole life and then now we're entering into retirement. And what's that going to be like? And so there's different things that can happen in life. In this case, Jacob is going to be leaving his father-in-law. He's no longer working for him. He's going to go. He's going to start his own, life. He already has his own family, but he's going to go back to his hometown, get away from Laban, run his own cattle and all that kind of stuff. But there's a wrong way to enter into a new phase of life, okay? And it might mess up your future, make your future harder. I believe that's what happens here with Jacob. All right, so the first way, and we'll obviously be following this story here and talking about what he did, but I want to apply that to us, okay? So the first way to kind of mess up and do the wrong thing, entering into a new phase of life, is to just up and leave one phase of your life, or up and leave whatever situation you're in without communicating. Just kind of just dropping, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm just going to leave. People do that all the time. We see church members, they'll be here 1 minute and then it's just like, whatever happened to them? They never told us that they're leaving. They just went, started something and did their own thing, never communicated it with the people that love them, and want to know. Many times people will leave a job and they're like, I'm just going to walk out. No call, no show. I'm just sick of it. I'm done. Or they just walk out in the middle of work. That is not a good way to enter a new phase of your life. You might be interested in changing jobs. You might be interested in a new situation, leaving home, going to a new town. Time to time in Iola, as you guys know, we'll come across people who have drug addictions and they're struggling with this one addiction or this one problem or another. And it's just something that's unfortunately prevalent in our town here. And I've had many times people talking to me about that situation and they're like, I just got to get out of this town. And I'm like, well, you know what? If you just left everything the way that you are right now, you just left and went to another part of town, I can about guarantee you things are going to follow you. You're going to just pick up some more bad things. You're going to, it doesn't just go away. You can't just get up and run from it and expect everything is going to be gone. In fact, leaving things often make it worse. A lot of people are like, I just need a new start. And so they'll walk out and now their landlord's looking for them because they got their last month of rent or they got, a deposit, whatever they got to pay or, just getting up and leaving without communication, just taking off is not a good way to enter into a new phase of life, okay? In this passage here, I won't make you stand because we're going to keep reading various places here tonight. But in this passage, Jacob decides, I've had enough, and his wives have too, apparently, and we're just going to get up and we're going to leave. Tired of working for Laban. I've worked for him 7 years. He tricked me, got one wife out of it, worked another 7 years, got another wife. Then he made me stick around a little bit longer and worked out this deal and all this kind of stuff. And now he's suspicious that I'm robbing him and I'm doing all this stuff. So anyway, let's just read it. chapter 31. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. Now the thing was, if you remember the story, actually he worked out a deal because Laban was trying to convince him to stay. So he's like, all right, I'll tell you what, give me the cattle that have spots and ring straked, and I don't know the words they used, spotted. And you can have all the ones that are solid color. And obviously he knew a little bit about how that works and breeding and stuff like that. And ended up having like almost all the herd is spotted, okay? And so he ends up with all these cattle, in a way tricking his father-in-law and, you know, in a way taking or stealing from him, but it was kind of fair. Like he did work out this deal legally with this father-in-law. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. It was froward, okay, toward and froward. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father, and your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring-straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-straked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father, and given him to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes, and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams and which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leaped upon the cattle. Leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest the vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. Okay, so Jacob goes, tells his wives and his family, we're going to get out of here. Your father Laban is against me. He's upset, and he's the one who's tricked me and done all this stuff. Now, there's nothing wrong with that up until this point. In fact, it kind of seems like he's not doing anything wrong because of the fact that God even tells him, you're going to leave, go back to your homeland. But that doesn't mean that God was telling him, hey, don't even tell Laban that you're leaving. Just get up and leave and take all the cattle with you and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so why is it that he left? What made him decide, I've got to get out of here? Well, number one, there was some fear that his boss, Laban, wasn't happy with him, that he felt like he was going to feel like he was robbed, and Jacob was the one that robbed him, okay, which Jacob has kind of had people feel that way towards him before, his brother and his dad, and he tricked them, supplanted them, and all this kind of stuff, and now, it seems as though, hey, I haven't done anything wrong. God just blessed me and I had all this, and that's probably true. But there's nowhere in here where God says, hey, just get up and go take all the stuff with you and don't try to work it out. You see, the Bible teaches that a servant should be in subjection to and honor his master. In our culture today, that's just not how it works. I mean, you talk to somebody about their boss and they'll be free to tell you, my boss is this and that, and not very patient, not very kind, not fair with the wages, changing my wages, not giving me what I deserve. Maybe they're what do you call it? Can't think of the name, but they're just a taskmaster, and they work me too hard and all this kind of stuff. And everyone you talk to about their boss, if they've been with them for any length of time, probably going to talk like that. That's just so common in our society today. People not happy with their bosses, not like their bosses. But the Bible never says, well, only be loyal to your boss if they treat you right. But the moment that they're unfair with you, then you're free to just leave, walk away from them, get mad or whatever. But the Bible doesn't teach that Christians should be that way. And I realize we're in the Old Testament. These teachings aren't necessarily there yet, recorded in the Word of God, but this is still how God feels. And so this is the message for us today. Okay, 1 Peter chapter 2. And there's a lot of places, Ephesians 5 and Colossians talks about it, Titus. A lot of things tell us how we're supposed to act as servants. All right, 1 Peter. Not realize it wasn't in a situation where he was necessarily a slave or something like that, but still, this was his master, it was his boss that he had been working for all these years. And even though he tricked him, and even though he was a jerk about it, Jacob still could have went to him and respectfully given him his position, and maybe if God would allowed, maybe still giving him back some of those speckled cattle and all that stuff that even though he had the right to take it because of the deal they worked out, it would have been fair. It would have been nice for him to give some of those back or whatever the case was. But he's just mad and a little scared about what's going to happen and says, they're not fair anyway, so I'm just leaving. I'm just quitting and disappearing. You're not going to see me anymore. All right, 1 Peter chapter 2 and look at 18. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. Remember, Laban wasn't toward him, which means he was froward. For this is thankworthy. If a man be conscious toward God, endure grief. For this is thankworthy. If a man be conscious toward God, endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it, if when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. What it's saying here is God is actually going to be more pleased with you when you are handling unfair treatment and you're handling it in a godly manner. You're handling it in a way that honors God. He's very happy with you. If you did something wrong, and so your boss is mad at you because you did something wrong, what honor is in that? Like you just got what you had coming to you because you did a bad job or you didn't do what was expected of you. And so they're treating you harshly. But if they treat you harshly when you've done nothing wrong, or they're persecuting you because they just don't like you, you're a Christian, you don't hang out with them, you don't do the bad things that they like to do, whatever the case, hey, you keep serving them, you keep treating them nicely anyway, and God's going to be pleased with that. And I guarantee you, even if they don't like you for some reason, even if they've been treating you wrong, they're going to see it necessary to treat you right and keep you around. At this point, Laban's already realized, even though Jacob is scared about it, Laban has already said, I'm afraid because God blesses everything you do. I need you around because you can help me out of this situation. Okay, so there's no reason Jacob should have just up and left without talking to him. I don't see a reason for that. Let him say bye to his daughters and his grandchildren and all that kind of stuff. I realize they feel like they've been tricked and they've been cheated and he hasn't, he just kind of gave them away and didn't care about anything. But you know what? That's still their dad. I understand now they're in Jacob's care. They're his wives. But they should have still, had that opportunity to say goodbye. And if there was something that they had against each other, Jacob, for some reason, Laban's mad at me, I should go to him before I quit, before I walk away, make it right, be on good page with them, and before I leave. This is just a good ethics, okay? Now, this is a good Christian moral that the Bible teaches, but it's also just good ethics if you think about it. And it's going to be good for you because it's always good to leave something on good terms. Okay, you leave one house, you leave one landlord and you move to another landlord. It sure is nice to have the old landlord be able to say nice things about you. You know, if you leave one job, go to another job. Sure is nice to have a boss say, yeah, I can't say anything negative about them. They sure did a good job. We hate losing them. You know what I mean? If I lost a church member because they're moving out of town and they're going to go to that church and they're a good, you know, or maybe they left for, you know, because they had aught against me or something like that. But they're going to a good church. That pastor calls and says, hey, what do you think about so-and-so? Nothing bad to say about them. They're good people. Like they, you know, I understand why they left. They talked to me. We worked it out. They're a good person. I recommend them. Isn't that the kind of, when you enter into a new phase of your life, isn't that the kind of testimony and the reputation that you want to have? That's the best for everybody. This is why it's always nice to give your employer like a 2 weeks notice before you quit. Explain to them why you're leaving, what opportunities there. Let them know, hey, I'm not just going to use these last 2 weeks to get a paycheck and be a thorn in your side. No, I'm actually going to work hard for you and do everything that I can to train the next person who's going to take my spot or whatever the case. But it's right to leave and enter into a new phase of your life having dealt with the things that you had, with the things that you're leaving behind. You want to have good references from them, you know. You want to be a man of your word. You said you're going to do something, you did it. And you said you're not going to do something, you didn't do it. So just to up and to leave and not communicate what's going on causes all kind of problems. And in this case, it does cause problems. We'll read it in a minute. But Laban eventually is like, hey, where did they go? And he chases them down and he tries to find them. He's like, what were you thinking? You know, it was a bad situation, which obviously God ends up, you know, fixing and taking care of. But that shouldn't be the case. I was also thinking about in Philemon, Onesimus, I think I said that right. Onesimus. Anyway, he's a slave, a runaway slave. And Paul ends up seeing him in jail and converting him apparently. Somehow he knows this is his brother in the faith, and he writes this to Philemon and says, "Hey, I'm talking here. You're a brother of mine. Like we're brothers in Christ, and you have respect for me. I have respect for you. I'm talking to this guy who's a runaway slave, and of course I'm paraphrasing Philemon, and he says I'm going to send him back, and don't lay anything to his charge. If he did you wrong, you know, charge me for it, and I'm vouching for this guy. He wants to come back. He wants to do right." But he shouldn't have ran away, or else Paul wouldn't have sent him back. You know, Paul would have just said, hey, you know what? He was treating you wrong. You go do your own thing. But no, he's like, hey, you need to have a good relation. This is your brother. In this case, it's even a brother in Christ, which is even more important to honor them and take care of them. I guess you could say it's more important. All right, again, God specifically told him to leave, and he's going to bless him. He's been blessing him. So you could say, like, well, Jacob didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, but God didn't tell him to just up and leave and not talk to Laban or do anything. And we got to be careful, again, not to just get in this mindset like I'm sick of my job, I'm sick of this life that I'm living and all this, and I just want to walk out of it and start fresh. Well, guess what? You're going to take that attitude. You're going to take all the stuff that you left behind. It's all going to follow you into this new phase of life, and it's not going to be as nice and glorious as you were hoping it was going to be if you haven't set yourself up for success, okay? Number 2 is again, how not to enter into a new phase of life, okay? Taking sins of the past with you, okay? Taking sin, you start a new phase of life, but you're going to just hold on to those sins and those things that you should be leaving behind, right? That's not the way it goes. Some people will say, I'm entering a new phase of my life. I'm going to get married. And now that I get married, I'm going to leave all the temptations of the past. I'm going to leave out my desires to party or to do this or that. And I'm just going to cleave to my wife. And we're going to be one flesh and yay. But then somebody holds on to, this or that, and maybe, holds on. I would hate for this to happen, but so holds on to maybe some phone numbers of old girlfriends or some relationships. It thinks like, well, what if? What if this doesn't work out? It'd be nice to have this other one fall back. No, don't bring those problems with you into that relationship. You leave a job, you don't want to carry in the stress and the baggage that you had in that old phase of life into your new phase of life. And so that's the application. The story, this isn't actually Jacob, but it's Jacob's wife. Okay, Jacob doesn't know that she did this. But here they're leaving Laban, they're leaving Rachel's dad's household, and apparently they were prone in that society or whatever to have idols, to have gods. And crazy because Jehovah, the God of the Bible, was supposed to be their God. And in Jacob's case, that's his household, and he, wants his household to follow the Lord. But Rachel, for whatever reason, when they're leaving Dad's house, says, I'm going to take some of these idols with me. Now, I don't know why. Is it a good luck charm? She's hoping that if she takes those, then they'll help her family on their journey. Does she take them just because they're valuable? Does she take them? I don't know why, but it is weird to think that she is the one who took these idols. Okay, look at chapter 19. I'm sorry, not chapter 19. Chapter 31, verse 19. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father. So while he went to go shear the sheep, she was in there stealing his images, his idols. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian. He stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward to the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled, and he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in the midst of, in the Mount Gilead. Now again, not cool. You still have to confront this situation. You're still going to have to talk to your father-in-law. Wouldn't it have been nice to have dealt with that before you even actually left, okay? But in this case, Laban comes. Why did you take my daughters? Well, they're not really your daughters anymore. You gave them away. But anyway, why did you take my daughters? Why did you take all this cattle? Why are you doing me wrong? Jacob kind of argues with them a little bit. Well, you didn't treat me right, and you did this and that. He says, yeah, but why'd you take my images? And Jacob's thinking like, I had no idea about your images. What are you talking about? And so let's see, try not to, verse 32. This is what he says to Laban after kind of arguing a little bit. He says, with whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee, for Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. Okay, so what Rachel does is she hides out. All right, this is my interpretation, but she goes to the bathroom, okay? Hangs out on the toilet, not really, or stool or whatever it says. And it says that, she pretends as though, hey, it's our custom. It's my time that all the ladies get, and I'm supposed to sit here, and sorry I can't get up. And really, she's hiding the images, okay? Jacob doesn't know she has them. Her dad probably doesn't expect that she would have taken them. And she kind of gets away with it. Jacob's like, hey, see, I don't have your gods. Why are you accusing me of this and all this stuff? Now, what's another weird thing about this is, interestingly, you say, like, well, what are they doing with images anyway? Well, interestingly, this seems to be a common thing. Okay, look at chapter 35. In chapter 35, verse 2, I'll try to, if I have time, cover the story a little bit about what happened up to this point. But chapter 35, and God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God, that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Then Jacob said unto his household, and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. So question, why do the people in your household have gods? I mean, who's in his household? We already know his wife stole an image. You know, his wives, both of his wives have children. He has 12 altogether, and they're grown by this time. Are his children, do they have gods? His servants, maybe he has some servants with him or whatever, besides his concubines or whatever. Do they have gods? Like, what are these people doing with gods and images and idols? But at this point, he's like, hey, I'm going to go up and, make an altar unto the Lord. So get rid of your idols and clean yourselves up and all this kind of stuff. Well, what are they doing with that stuff to begin with? When we decide, hey, I'm going to have a new phase of my life. As a Christian, that new phase should be something that brings you closer to God. That's walking away from something in the past that wasn't helping you, okay? Now, first of all, as I said, you should work those things out, face those things, confront them, say, this is why I'm leaving, and make it known. There's no reason to just up and leave. But secondly, when you get to that new phase of your life, don't hold on to those things in the past that were holding you back and wait till something bad happens and it's like, oh, I need to clean up again. No, that new phase of life, you should be able to start fresh and have gotten rid of some of the weight in the past that was holding you down. And again, this was what Rachel was doing, and it affecting the whole household of Jacob, apparently. For whatever reason, they tend to hold on to those things. And let's be honest, for whatever reason, we all tend to do that. With certain things we don't want to let go of. We feel like we need it. We need to hold on to that. Well, guess what? That new phase of your life is never going to be as good as it could be if you keep holding on to those things in your past. But the final thing that Jacob does, and I'm covering a lot of ground here, so we're not reading all these in detail, but the last thing I want to say is that he enters into this new phase of his life dropping his guard. Okay, so the next way that you don't want to enter into a new phase of your life is dropping your guard. For whatever reason this happens, you'd think that you'd be on your toes. New stage of life, new environment, all situations are new, depends on what your situation, why you're entering into a new phase of life. But a lot of times people find comfort in that new phase of life and they just start relaxing. And they're just like, hey, you know what? I used to worry about things. I used to keep my guard up. I used to guard against these things. And for whatever reason, that new phase of life, that experience, that older age, whatever it is, causes us to sometimes just get lazy maybe and not keep up our guard and not put up the fight. And that's partly probably why all the gods were there and all the images were there up until the last minute. But you might think that Jacob, goes to his hometown. He becomes Israel, right? His name's changed from Jacob to Israel. He's got the 12 tribes of Israel. God's going to bless him like he said he was going to. And everything is just great. But it's not. Okay? Now, God still is blessing him. The great things are still happening to him. He still has the promises. His offspring Christ is going to come from his offspring. So God is still protecting him and helping him and blessing him. But when you really look at his life and you look at how things went, you see he really drops his guard. For an example, in chapter 34, we see the story about Dinah, his daughter. And Dinah runs off and, she meets a man named Shechem. He defiles her, but I believe she was just as guilty as he was. They go off. He's probably sweet talking her or whatever. Then they have the relationship. And when they come back, Shechem's trying to get his parents to work out a deal or his dad to work out a deal. So they go to Jacob and his brothers and they're trying to figure out how they can get Dinah to be able to, allow them to let Shechem marry Dinah. And Jacob just kind of like, he basically, no, we're not going to do that. But he just kind of like lets it go, this whole ordeal that happened. And he didn't have his guard up to protect his daughter from that. Now that his daughter is defiled, he's kind of not doing anything about it. And it's just like letting his guard down, kind of like losing some of that zeal for the Lord, losing some of that passion. So that now his sons rise up in their zeal and they say, hey, we're going to get vengeance, and we're going to take this out on all these men of Shechem. Okay, and so you know the story. He convinces them, hey, we'll let you have our sister, our wives and our daughter. I mean, not our wives, but our sisters and our daughters and all that. You can marry them. All you have to do is become like us. You got to get circumcised. And so in their old age, they all get circumcised on that day. And the Bible says while they're still sore, Levi and Simeon come in and they slay them all with the sword, and they just kill them, right? Because they can't defend themselves. They're in too much pain. And of course, that's an awful thing. They shouldn't have done that. And then Jacob is like, hey, you caused us to stink in the land and all that. And he's mad at them now. But it's like, hey, a lot of this is your fault. Where were you in protecting your daughter? Where were you, when your sons went out and did this because you wouldn't stand up and do anything? You wouldn't try to make it right. And so I get from that the fact that I believe he had dropped his guard. And there's going to be other things that happen in his life as well in the chapters after this, but I believe that Jacob was a good man. Okay, I believe he did love the Lord. I believe that he did want to follow what God said. He's going to bless you and he's going to give you all these things. Jacob wanted those. He wanted to obey, but he fell into the trap that so many of us trap. So he fell into the trap that so many of us fall into, that he entered into these new phases of his life making these mistakes. Okay, so I'll just recap. Number one, he gets up and he just leaves without communicating, not saying what he's going to do. Don't try to run away from your circumstance and say, I'm just going to start fresh. I'm just going to enter in. It doesn't really work like that. You got to take care of what you're doing now. Let your yays be yays and your nays nays, and take care of yourself and be responsible. And then that new phase of life will go so much better. And then secondly, we see his wife is holding on to those sins of the past, and it messes up. It causes problems in her whole family. They're holding on to these idols and all this kind of stuff, taking the sins of the past with you. Don't do that. You're going into a new phase of your life. Let it be something that's going to draw you closer to the Lord and not push you back farther. And then the third thing is don't drop your guard. Okay, you enter into this new phase of life. A lot of times that new phase of your life, especially if it brought you closer to the Lord, is going to require that you have even more responsibility, that you even put your guard up more, because the temptation is going to be there, and it's going to be real easy to just get comfortable with this new way of life and then just forget that you have to put up your guard. All right, so try not to enter into new stages of your life in a way that sets you up for failure. You want to enter into these things in a way that is going to be good, help you, get you closer to the Lord. Don't try to enter a new phase simply because you're tired and unhappy and sick of your life right now. So I'll just go start a new one. No, it's not going to fix it. You must confront the situation that you're in, take care of that, resolve it, and then move into the new phase of your life. That's going to make everything so much better. And then finally, follow God wherever you find yourself. Now, the good thing about Jacob is, even though these mistakes would be made and his family's falling apart and all these things are happening, he does always come back to saying, hey, I want to follow the Lord. I'm going to offer this sacrifice. I'm going to do that. And he tries to get right with the Lord. So you find yourself in a new phase of life, but you drop the ball. And man, I didn't make anything better. I made them worse. You can still get right with the Lord. You can still kind of start fresh from there and get back on track. And then you'll enter a new phase of life, okay, once you get that dealt with. All right, just some thoughts in the life of Jacob there, and leaving Laban and entering into his new phase of life. In his old age, really, because he's quite old, if you remember, by this time. But it's still a new phase of life. All right, let's go to Lord in prayer. Lord, we thank you once again for your word and for the studies that we've had today, and just help us to apply it to ourselves. And no matter what we've gone through in life, and no matter how old we get, there's always new phases that we find ourselves in, Lord. And so I think this is applicable to all of us. I pray that you help us just to think about it and do what's right and be responsible, deal with our situations, have respect and honor for our authorities, and handle the situations in a godly manner. We know that you're pleased by that, and so I pray that you help us do it, and we know you'll bless us for it, and we'll be glad to give you the thanks for the many blessings that come our way. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.